Hello everybody, I'm Steve and welcome to Greenside Up. Now today I'm getting ready for sowing these tomorrow. These are my sweet peas and excuse me, I bought these from Eagle Sweet Peas and it's the Chelsea collection. I've tried over the years most of their collections and I think this is probably the best. Now there's 8 varieties in there, 20 seeds in each variety, so it's like 8 packets of seeds and the cost is £12. Now as it's 20 seeds, 8 varieties, I'm only going to sow 5 of each, so that's 40 seeds and that'll be enough for what I need, and it will allow me to sow again in the autumn of this year and spring the next year. So out of that £12 I'm getting 3 lots of flowers. So what I'm going to do, there we go, there's all the packets, is I'm going to soak some of the seeds. Now this is one of those things, it's a personal preference. Some say you don't need to soak sweet pea seeds, and I agree with that to a point. The problem is with me, I've always soaked them and they've always worked. So going back on something that works is incredibly difficult to do. I have for many years followed Eagle Sweet Peas advice on how to sow their seeds apart from that, and they state quite clearly on their website that you don't need to soak or chit them. I've never chitted, but I have soaked in the past and it works. So it is a difficult one, but I'll just soak them and they'll get about 12 hours soaking. They won't be soaked for an awful long time. So I'm just cutting these open and counting them out, 5 of each variety. I've already got some down the allotment that I sowed in the autumn. They're growing away quite nicely. Many of you will have seen them in previous videos, and if you looked at them now, and I'm hopefully going to go down the allotment in the morning and I'll get some footage of them and show you what I mean before I sow these. And they're about this sort of height in a minute. Doesn't look like they're doing anything, but they're making roots underneath, and hopefully I'll be able to show that tomorrow, as I say. So just going to put a bit of water on them just so they soak overnight, and I'll leave these on the propagator. I want it just slightly warm. I say this is the way I've always done it and it works for me, so I see no reason to change what I do. But we'll get them sown tomorrow, and I'll take you through that process of how I sow my sweet peas and the 2 different methods that I use for them. So we'll crack on with that tomorrow. So here are my autumn sown sweet peas, and I'll put the date at the bottom of the screen because I can't remember off the top of my head, but they're the ones I sowed last year, and although they haven't grown much, they have grown because you can just see roots coming out the bottom of them, of these plants. You know, so they're filling up the pots, they're making roots whilst growing a little bit. I mean, they've, since the other side of Christmas, probably grown an inch or 2. So they're not growing incredibly fast, but they are making roots. And what that means is that my other plants will probably catch up with them to a degree, but these will flower first. And then as they've faded away and I clear them away, the others will still flower and carry on flowering for a lot longer afterwards. So I get that sort of continuation of flower. So that's why I do both ways. And you can see with these here, these pots, these are little poly pots. There's a lot of compost in them because they're going to be sat in that compost for a long time, so they need that feed. And I will start feeding as soon as the weather starts warming up and they start getting away a little bit more faster, then I will start feeding them a nice nitrogen feed, get them going. Whereas the other ones that I'm going to sow today, they will just be in root trainers and they'll be in there until they go out in the garden. Hello everybody, so I'm going to get on with sowing these sweet peas today, and I'll show you the peas in a minute. First of all, I want to talk to you about how I'm growing them. Now, you've just seen my plants down the allotments where I've grown them in a decent sized amount of compost, because they were in there from the end of October and they'll be there till the end of March into April. So it's like November, December, January, February, March, 5 months. That's why I've grown them in a massive compost. My next batch, my spring sown sweet peas, I'm sowing into these. These are root trainers. Now, this is how they come. They're like this, and you just basically fold them together, and they just loosely hold themselves up, and you end up with this little cassette. You can see that they're ridged, and as they are called root trainers, what happens, the plant grows, the roots hit the sides, they can't spin round like they can around a pot. They're in the groove and they just go down through and out the bottom. Where you see that little hole, it's about 1 centimetre by 2 centimetres wide. The roots come out of that hole and they've got no compost around them, they dry off and they break off. Now you don't need to worry about that, because the main body of the roots are still in this plant. And what that means is all the roots are going down, so when you open the cassette later to plant them, you can just take a plant out and all the roots are already heading downwards into your soil. You plant your plants and the plants get away lovely, because the roots have been burnt off at the end, or air pruned as they call it, and they're ready to rock and roll, and they just get off and get into the ground so much quicker, and they benefit from that. Now, I've grown them these and beans and sweet corn, those sorts of fast growing plants in root trainers for a good amount of years. And I tried something different a couple of years ago, and I'll just grab it, because you'll see these. If you go looking for root trainers, you'll see these modules, trays, and that's essentially what they are. I don't think they're root trainers. Yes, they're grooved and the roots will go down, but the problem comes is to when you want to get them out. I mean, these are a good 5-inch deep, these cells. And what it means is some will come out and some you can push out very gently and squeeze and tease out and pull. Combination of squeezing and pulling the plant, you can get them out. But that's a 60 cell tray, and if you get 40 out in one piece, you'll be lucky. That's my take on it. And I have seen other people taking a pen and shoving it up there to gently push the plant out, but that immediately to me is already pushing those roots against the flow of where you want them to go and why you bought a root trainer in the first place. I've also seen other people who will take a plant out of this, they'll only maybe get half the plant out, and then they'll pot them on into a standard size pot, which generally means then that they're squashing the roots into the plot, again defeating the object of using the root trainer. Now, it's personal preference, and I know there's some of the people I've just mentioned are damn good gardeners, and it's personal preference, and if they choose to use them, they do. But if you're buying root trainers to grow things like sweet peas, beans and sweet corn, then buy the proper ones in the first place. I don't like these. These are more like a deep cell module tray. I'll find a use for that one day, but I haven't as yet. Buy these, buy proper root trainers. Now, if you buy a root trainer set at the start, you'll get one of these wire baskets that you can sit them in. There's 32 cells in there, and you will also get a domed plastic lid to go over it, and it will act as a bit of a propagator at the same time. You don't need that with sweet peas, but it may help if you're germinating beans or sweet corn. As I say, they're both warmer weather crops. And I can't remember now, because it's long since I've lost the lid. I mean, this set here is about, well, must be 10, 12 years old now. But I think that you can turn the lid over, plop the whole tray in and use it as a bit of a water reservoir. But I might be wrong on that. I can't quite remember. It's been that long ago. So they're my preference. I say buyer beware with those module trays. Buy them for what you think you use them for. But if you're buying them explicitly as a root trainer, then I don't think it's worth it, and you'd be better off buying these straight away. There's nothing wrong with them. They're a deep cell tray, but my preference is not to use them, and I think they cause the plants more damage than these. So there we go. So we'll get these filled up with compost now. So I've got my root trainer cassettes all set up in an old mushroom tray here. And if you want to find these mushroom trays, then a veg market, anywhere that's got a canteen or a restaurant. I know not many places are open at the minute, but anywhere that's using mushrooms in bulk, you'll should be able to get these, because most people just throw them away. So have a look at that. But this is sieve compost. I always sieve compost for sowing seeds. Couple of reasons really. Smaller seedlings, finer seedlings do better if they're in sieve compost, because they're not grabbing hold of big lumps of things and potentially breaking when you're trying to prick them out or move them on later on. And also, another theory I have, if you've got lumps in your compost, lumps don't feed. This stuff does. This is the stuff that's got the feed in. So again, it's just my theory. I'm not going over excessive with them, because I'm going to thoroughly soak this in a minute, and I don't want a lot of compost in. Really, after I've soaked them, the level will drop, and that's what I want, because then I know the compost is all the way down through the cassette, and it will also tie in with what I'm going to do when I sow the seeds, which we'll come to next, but we'll go and water this first. So I just have the root trainers filled up, loosely filled up with compost here, and I'm going to water them. Now in this watering can, there's a couple of pints of warm water out of the tap, and then filled up with cold water from the cold tap, obviously. I just don't want that shock of the cold water straight onto this compost. The compost has been kept warm, and I want just to maintain some of that warmth. You can see I'm soaking this completely, and I'll give that a couple of minutes to drain through, and then I'll soak it again, and we'll go from there with that. So here's the difference in the two types of seed. Sorry, they're both sweet pea seeds, but one has been soaked and one hasn't, one straight out of the packet. Now, Eagle sweet peas do say to not bother soaking the seeds, but as I say, I've always done it, and so I continue doing it. But I soaked 40 seeds, and in my root trainer modules there, I've got 48. So I've taken 8 dry seeds out, and I shall mark them up, put a label in where the dry seeds are, and I'll just see, because it is really a waste of time soaking the seeds, but I can't stop myself doing it. I don't know if by sowing the dry seeds I'll get any better results, but I know that soaking them does work. Anyway, we'll get on with sowing now. So these modules have been watered 3 or 4 times now. I've used a bucket and a half of slightly off cold water, heading towards the tepid water, and I just wanted to keep the compost slightly warm. These are going to go in the house until I've got germination, then I'll come back out into the reasonably warmish greenhouse. Now you'll notice I haven't labelled them. I don't really care for that, to be honest. Because they're all going to be growing in the garden, they're all going at the allotments, they're all going to be harvested, and I'll see what colour they are when they come out, when they flower. I'm not too bothered about that. The ones I sowed at the allotments in August, I labelled those because I've grown those chiefly because I want those at home, and my partner Anne, she may want to know what colour's what and where it's going. So that's why I've done that with those. But otherwise, you just see when they come up what they are and know what varieties they are. So I'm just simply chucking one in each cell. So this compost is absolutely drenched and it's drained. And there's my 40 wet seeds. I'll pop a label in the end for this lot, and these are the dry seeds. I say, in theory, there shouldn't be any difference. These might take slightly longer to germinate, these dry seeds, simply because the first job a seed's got to do is to take up water to expand, and then it opens and the roots come out. I think it's the cotyledon, and then it shoots up for its first seed leaves. So I filled these cassettes up now with dry compost straight from the bag, sieved of course, straight onto the top, and you'll notice I've put a few slug pellets on the top. Now this whole tray is going to go into our kitchen just for the ambient warmth. It doesn't get that hot in there, it stays at about 15 degrees or 24 hours a day, but I found that's just enough just to get them going. Once I see germination, then they come out back out of here into the greenhouse, which is slightly warmer again than the ambient outside temperature, but they don't need a great deal of heat. So don't be fixated with that and think must get them in a propagator. You don't need to do that. And the slug pellets are on top chiefly because this is bagged compost, and even though it's sieved, slugs will get past that. And I think that probably every bag of compost has probably got a slug in it. And last year I found out to my cost. I put a tray just like this, left it in the kitchen, and one morning I came and lifted the paper off them, and there was about 8 seedlings poking through. I went to the allotment, came back at lunchtime, and they'd all been eaten, and they were in my kitchen. The only place the slug could have been was in the compost itself, and they decimated those plants, and I had to re-sow. So learnt my lesson, slug pellets on the top. If there's any in that compost, they will eat the slug pellets, leave a slime trail on the top, and I'll soon know that they were in there, because I'll notice the pellets have gone and the slug trails of course. So they're protected in that respect. And the reason you put dry compost on is the compost underneath is soaked, and then you put the seed on, and as Eagle Sweet Peas say, put the dry seed on, no need to soak or chit. The idea is by capillary reaction, the water is drawn up to the dry compost. It's in compost with the wet compost. By doing that, it draws it past the seed, soaks the seed, and then it germinates. So all I need to do now is just take that into the kitchen, cover it with some paper, and just to conserve the moisture in there, and off we go. We're off and running with them. So that's it, they're sown. That's the Chelsea collection sown. I grow them particularly highly perfumed, but also they've got a pickety edge to the petal. I think if you're going to grow sweet peas, they're big and blousy. Why not keep them big and blousy? A lot of your sort of common garden, if you like, sweet peas, they'd be lovely and highly scented, but they've got very tiny petals and they're just sort of flat. They're lovely, don't get me wrong, but these things, great big glorious clumps of flowers on them, and with the pickety or ruffled edge to the petals, it just makes them look absolutely stunning. So, and that's why I grow those. That's the Chelsea collection from Eagle Sweet Peas. But that's it for this video. Look after yourselves everyone, and I'll see you in a couple of days. Stay safe. Ta-ra now.